This video will show you how to replace the cable on the Kobalt 25-foot quartered auto feed drum auger, model KDA100. We strongly recommend wearing snug-fitting leather gloves and safety goggles during this process to protect your hands and eyes, as the cable may build up tension which can be released when it is removed. Removal of old cable. First, unplug the tool and ensure the clamp lock lever and the feed lock dial are both unlocked. Next, locate the 3 bearings surrounding the cable inside the feed lock dial and use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove all 3 screws and bearings. Ensure all screws and bearings are removed from the tool and set them aside. If old cable is accessible. If the old cable is accessible from the front of the tool, pull the old cable out of the tool by hand as far as you can. Once you reach the first flared bulb located about 2 feet from the end of the cable, you will feel resistance and you will not be able to pull the cable by hand any further. When you get to this part of the cable, hang the tool sideways from the cable so the tool is about 1 inch from the ground or work surface. Then, while grasping the cable firmly in one hand, use the other hand to spin the tool in a clockwise direction until the first flared section of the cable comes loose. Note, some tools may need to be rotated several times to complete this step. If you are not able to grasp the cable firmly enough by hand, a locking pliers may be used to hold the cable during this step. Once the first flared section of the cable has been removed, pull out the last 2 feet of the cable by hand as far as you can, and then repeat the previous step to remove the last flared section of the cable at the very end of the cable. If old cable is stuck in drum. If the old cable is stuck in the drum and not accessible from the front of the tool, it will be necessary to open the drum and retrieve the cable. To do this, perform the following steps. First, use a pencil and mark a line perpendicular to the parting line on the side of the drum where the front and back halves of the drum meet. This will make it easier to ensure that the screw bosses are properly aligned when reassembling the drum. Use a Phillips head screwdriver to unscrew the 4 screws at the front of the drum. If possible, use a screwdriver with a magnetic tip to remove the screws completely, to make realigning the drum easier. Once the screws have been removed, use a flathead screwdriver to pry the drum open in order to access the old cable. It may be necessary to use 2 screwdrivers spaced apart to create a large enough gap to access the cable inside. Use needle nose pliers, screwdriver, or small hook to grab hold of the old cable and remove it completely from the drum. Once the old cable has been removed, reinsert 4 screws, ensuring that 2 halves of the drum are properly aligned by lining the pencil marks made earlier. Note, if the screws were not able to be removed completely, some may be protruding and rubbing against the outside of the screw bosses in the back half of the drum, making it difficult to properly align the 2 halves of the drum. If this happens, use a Phillips screwdriver to unthread the screws as far as possible so they are recessed or flush with the screw bosses in the front half of the drum. Keep the tool facing nose down while aligning 2 halves of the drum to keep the screws from falling back down. Once the 2 halves of the drum have been properly aligned, tighten each of the 4 screws, ensuring each screw is tightly secured into the screw boss. New cable installation. Once the old cable has been completely removed from the drum, your new cable can be installed. Use caution when removing the new cable from the packaging. Hold the cable securely while removing the zip ties, as the cable may spring outwards as tension is released when the zip ties are cut. Ensure the clamp lock lever and the feed lock dial are both unlocked. Locate the flat end of the cable and insert it directly into the front of the tool, being mindful to keep it as straight as possible, centered, and completely in line with the opening inside the feed lock dial. Insert the cable until it makes contact with the back of the drum and cannot be pushed any further. Note, the cable should be able to move freely in and out during this step as it butts against the drum. If the cable gets stuck and cannot move in and out freely, remove the cable completely from the tool using the same technique described earlier for removing the old cable, and try again to reinsert the cable until the cable can freely move in and out as it bottoms out against the back of the drum. Once the first few inches of the cable have been fully inserted, continue to apply pressure on the cable with one hand while using the other hand to rotate the drum counterclockwise to the left if the tool is facing away from you. This will allow the end of the cable to bend and begin to coil itself inside the drum. Note, Elevating the tool off the ground during this step can make it easier. If you are unable to rotate the drum by hand, you may alternatively use the motor during this step. To do this, plug in the tool, place the forward/reverse switch in the reverse position, and ensure the clamp lock lever and the feed lock dial are both unlocked. Then, briefly and gently pull the trigger while applying inward pressure on the cable. The cable should pop into the drum as soon as the trigger is pulled. During this step, it is important to ensure your gloved hand isn't too close to the feed lock dial at the front of the tool. Once the cable has been partially coiled inside the drum, ensure the tool is unplugged and continue to hand feed the cable into the drum until the second flared section of the cable has been fully inserted into the drum. Additional force may be required to insert the second flared bulb into the drum. Feed the remaining cable into the drum and replace the 3 screws and bearings surrounding the cable inside the feed lock dial, ensuring screws are centered inside the bearings. Lastly, test the tool by slowly advancing and retracting the cable a few inches at a time, by hand and with the auto feed mechanism, to ensure it functions normally. Congratulations! Your new cable has been successfully installed and your tool is ready for action. If you have any issues or questions during your cable replacement, please contact Kobalt Customer Service at 888-356-2258 or by email at partsplus@lowes.com.